Okay, so here we are. I've got some paper laid out, and I've got all my rulers handy. I've got a couple of pencils that I sharpened. You can just use a basic number 2 pencil. You don't want to work in ink because you can't erase it, and it gets kind of messy. So the first measurement that we need, we're doing the basic bodice draft for the front of the garment. And your first measurement is a full length measurement. So it was a measurement from the high point of shoulder to the waist. And I'm working on a size 10, and so my measurement is 17 5/8 inches. So I'm going to draw that first line at 17 5/8. So I look on my ruler for where that 5/8 is, and I'm going to come straight down and make a line that's 17 5/8. So that's going to be my center front. The next measurement that you're going to draft is across the shoulder. So that's going to be up at the very top. So it's a good idea sometimes to mark these. So this first line was A to B. And sometimes I like to write down the measurement. So that was 17 5/8. That way I don't have to keep going back and looking for it. So the next line you're going to draw is you're going to square up a line across the top, at the very top of that first line. And to square it up, if you have the square ruler, I need to bring this down so you can see the whole thing. So here's my top. Bear with me while I make sure the camera's going to incorporate everything that we're doing. So I think I need it to be, let's see. There we go. You can see the top. All right. So going across the top, I need to have 7 3/4 inches minus 1/8 of an inch. So square up your ruler. You really want this to be exactly at 90 degrees. So if you don't have a square, you're going to have to be careful that maybe you use the see-through ruler that you can overlap. Let me grab that just to make sure. With the see-through ruler, you're able to lay it over top and line up one of these 2-inch marks, and that will help you square it up so that you don't wind up like skewing it a little bit. So, but I can line this up. I hope everybody got one of these because you'll really enjoy this ruler if you get one. So I needed 7 3/4 inches for across the shoulder. So that's going to take us from the center of the neck to out at the end of the shoulder. And for that, I need my line to be actually 7 5/8. So we took 7 3/4 and we subtracted 1/8, and that comes to 7 5/8. So I'm going to go over 7 5/8. I usually make a little straight line so I know that's where that 5/8 is, and come across. And now that becomes your area that's called A to C. So I like to put a C here and mark that with 7 5/8. Oops. 7 5/8. So there we go there. I think I'm going to have to switch to doing a marker because you guys aren't going to be able to see these lines. Okay, so let's see. Can you see this? There we go. I think that's good. You guys should be able to see. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is your full length, A to B. And then from A to C is across the shoulder minus 1/8 of an inch. And so you can see I'm marking them A, I'm marking it C. I'm also writing my measurement down so that I don't have to question myself later on if I'm checking something. And then up here at this line for the C, again, you want to use you want to square it up. You don't want it to go off at an angle. If all of these aren't square, then something happens along the way where your pattern becomes a little skewed and it doesn't fit right. So here, we need to square down just a 3-inch line. So I'm going to come down to 3. As a draftsperson, I used to do architectural drafting. I always put a little line going through the end of the measurement so that I can always double check that too. You don't want to keep adding or subtracting a 1/16 or an 1/18 of an inch by mistake and then nothing seems to add up right. So this part of it, you need to be as accurate as you possibly can be. So then the next thing is something called B to D. So what we're doing is we're going to establish where is my neckline, because this is my shoulder up here. And this will wind up angling down like your shoulder does, but basically this is your shoulder and this is your waist down here. Where does our neck fall? And it's nothing that we ever just arbitrarily pick. All of this is based on mathematics. So to come down here to get the drop for your neck, you're going down the center front for the size 10. I'm looking at that center front length. So whatever you measured from your neck to your waist, that's the length that would be here. So in the basic size 10, that's 14 7/8 inches. So I'm going to come back up from the bottom and I'm going to look for, here's my 14 7/8. So it's almost 15 inches. It's 1/8 of an inch less. And so I'm going to set that there and I'm going to come up here and I'm just going to make this little cross line that's the length to that area. And what you want to do is extend that line out. About 4 inches, we'll square it up. So I'm just going to bring this line out. About 4 inches. It could be a little less. That's not going to be a critical length. So this is considered an area from B to D is what we've just measured. So this becomes the letter D here. And I like to write, like I said, my measurement right next to it. And then the next thing to do is we're going to do what's called the bust arc. The bust arc is a measurement that you took from the center of your front over the bust and to under the arm. So it's 1/4 the measurement. If someone had a 36-inch bust, it would be like 1/4 of that, but not an equal amount. You don't take 36 and divide it by 4 because in the body in the front, your bust projects more than it does across the back. So your body arc for the bust is bigger in the front. When we do the body arc for the hip, because the buttocks in the back stands out more than our abdomen does, then the body arc for the hip is going to be larger in the back than it is in the front. So all of these measurements are really important to be able to draft a pattern and have it be to fit accurately. So I've extended that line out from D. So now we need the bust arc. So my bust arc is 10 inches, plus I have to add a 1/4. Why are we adding a 1/4 of an inch? Well, we have to have wearing ease. Something cannot be, a pattern cannot be exactly the same dimension as what you've measured the body, because then it's like you spray painted it on. It's too tight. We need what's called wearing ease so we're able to move in the garments. So my bust arc is 10 plus 1/4 of an inch. So that's done. That measurement gets added at the bottom. So I'm going to square off from the bottom of the center front, and I need 10 1/4 inches. So 10 1/4. I got to turn my ruler the other way. Sometimes you'll see that you have to flip-flop the ruler so you can get to that, the 1/8 inches. So 10 1/4 is over here. And I'm going to draw that line. And now, this spot over here is the letter E. And it would be really good that you have these down there, because then if I'm talking to you about something, I can say, well, look at your measurement between B and E, and what is that? So this is our bust arc, and it was 10 1/4. And then we're going to square up from there, because basically what we're doing is we're doing something called a block draft. And so we're starting with basically a block. So we're going to square up from there about 11 inches. This is not a critical length. You're just giving yourself a line that will wind up being the center seam. I mean side seam. Oops, I dropped my darn thing here. Okay, it's still going. So this will become the side seam. Center front, side seam. I know it doesn't look like it yet, but that's what we'll have. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to figure out our shoulder slopes. Shoulders are not square from the neck out to the shoulder. They drop at an angle. And some people, the slope is a little bit further down. Some people are more squared off. And it's really interesting that in commercial clothing, that slope is based on like 90-some% of the population. What would that angle be? I have very square shoulders, so does my daughter. And so what happens with me with something like a coat is it actually pushes the collar up too high, because it's assuming that the shoulder near your arm is lower. So when I draft patterns for myself, I always have to correct that area and make the shoulder much more square, which generally requires me to drop the neck down some. So all of this drafting will help you make something that's more custom fitted. So the shoulder slope on the, if you look at the chart for a standard measurement, is number 7. So in the book, you'll see it says B to G, shoulder slope, and then in parentheses, number 7. That 7 is referring to the measurement that's on the standard measurement chart. So it is 17 3/4 inches plus 1/8. So I would convert my 3/4 to 6/8 and add an 8. So that's going to be 7/8. So I need 17 3/4 plus an 8. So that's going to be 17 7/8. So 17 7/8. So to draft that line, I'm going from B, which is your lower right-hand corner, and I'm coming up to hit this line wherever 17 7/8 is. So you're going to actually angle your ruler and look for where 17 7/8 is. So here's my 17, here's 7/8 is right there. So I have to actually slide this ruler back and forth to get the right spot for that length. So here's my 17 7/8. So now I know that from the front of my neck here, here's my shoulder, I'm going to be drawing a line that creates that shoulder seam. So I wrote over here, this is my shoulder slope. So the next thing we need is the bust depth. So the bust depth is from your shoulder to the bust, like the apex of the bust. And so that dimension is 9.5 inches for a size 10. If you're doing a size 8, it's a different number. So make sure that you don't follow along with the numbers that I'm doing, but you choose the numbers that fit the size that you're drafting, I'm sorry. So that becomes line GB. Mark on line GB. So you want to come back down this line. I'm going to come down 9.5 inches. I hope I'm going slow enough for everybody. I have a tendency to talk really fast, so I'm trying to slow it down and give you time to actually do something. So you're going to come back down this diagonal line, and you're going to mark that bust depth. So mine was 9.5, and I'm just going to draw a line, or you can make a little dot on the line there, whatever works easier for you. And that becomes the letter H. So that's basically called the bust depth. If it helps, you can write that next to it. I have a tendency to put more information than what's always required, just because I know that it's easier for me when I go back to double check something, that I've written it all down and I'm not going through the whole process again. So now what we want is our shoulder length. How long is the shoulder from your arm to your neck? And you're going to be angling the ruler from this area over here, which was G, and you're going to go up at an angle for your shoulder length. So my shoulder length is 5¼ inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 5¼ where this intersected the G to B line, where that intersects on this little line that we dropped vertical, and I need 5¼ inches. And again, what we wind up doing is you wind up angling the ruler until it actually touches the A to C line. So that now becomes my shoulder line. So basically up here where it intersects, you're going to call that I, and that was your shoulder length. And this one was 5¼ inches. Now we're going to square down from that intersection. So your shoulder's going to come square down towards this line that you made at D, which is your neckline. So I'm going to place my ruler along that shoulder line, and I'm going to come down to my neckline, which is D. So I'm just connecting those together. So right now we basically have sort of an angled neck, which we are going to curve with a curved ruler when we're finished. The next is to calculate the bust span. So how far do we need to go across for the bust? And that will help us when we're drafting an armhole. I'm just checking something here. Okay. So the bust span. You're going to take your measurement and you have to add 1/4 inch to it. So I need 3 7/8. If I add 1/4 inch, I'm going to wind up at 4 1/8. So right here where we made this little mark at the H, we're going to come straight through square. So your ruler squares up with the center front, and it intersects that little, the bust depth. And I need 4 1/8 inch. So let's hope that's 4. It's not. Ooh, it's not. Okay. 4. Let me stop for a minute. So our bust span. Our bust span is you're coming across at this mark that you made, which we labeled H, you're going to square up with the front. So your ruler is on that front line, and then it's going through the H, and you have to square up that length. So for this area, I needed 4 1/8. So I'm going to come straight across. 4 1/8 is over here. So you'll see that I actually intersected this line. It doesn't end on this line. We're bringing it out however far we need to have it. So, and that location will now become K. And that was your bust span plus 1/4 inch. So mine was 4 1/8. Okay. So now you're going to draw a line. You're going to come down here from D to this line that we intersected, and you're going to do half of that measurement. So you measure this, you divide it in half, and you mark that halfway mark. So mine is 7 1/4. So 3 1/2 would be half of 7, and then 1/4 inch would be another 8. So I'm at 3 5/8. And this location is going to be L to M. So we're going to go across. Once we've marked this little spot, this is L, you're going to go across the measurement of the chest plus 1/4 inch. So we're determining where the bust is going towards the underarm. So I need 7 inches. So again, keep this squared up with your front. Don't let it dip. So 7 is over here, and I'm drawing that line. And that's going to be marked as L to M. And it was 7 inches. So you want to square up a line at the end of the 7 inches. And you're just going to draw it up a couple inches and down a couple inches. It's just a stopping point. It doesn't have to be an exact measurement. So the next thing is we're going to determine where is our dart. So I'm going to move this up a little bit. So the dart placement, when you're measuring on a dress form where the princess seam is, that's where you want your dart. It's the most attractive spot is for it to be directly under the bust. So on my chart, dart placement is 3/16 of an inch. But I need to get to F first. So hang on. I want to make sure I get this right. If I check my chart, the dart placement is 3 1/4 inches over. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to put a little line through it. So this is dart placement. I'm just going to mark it, which was 3 1/4 inch. And you're going to square a little line through there because that's going to be the start of the dart. And this little line down here actually comes down about 3/16. So 3/16 is going to be a little less. 1/8. It's halfway between 1/8 and the second eighth. So it's not a very long line, but it just extends a little bit below. Our next dimension is something that's called a new strap. And I do not know the history behind why they call it new strap, but my measurement is 17 3/4 inches plus an eighth. So that would make it 17 7/8 of an inch. And what's happening is after we add a dart, oh, we can't see it, let's see. After you add a dart at a waistline, you can see that your it's no longer square. Our waistline is curved, so it's going to dip down to the dart and then it's going to go back up. So what we're doing is we're mapping out the part at the side seam where it's going back up, and that's referred to new strap. So I need 17 5/8. So for that dimension, I'm actually putting my ruler on the part of the shoulder that's closest to your neck. That was number I. And then I'm going to rotate this out over this line, which was the E line, and I'm looking for 17 5/8. So I'm going to draw a line through there to here. And now this becomes a location that is N. So this is N. And it was 17 5/8. So don't worry if it looks a little confusing. We're almost there. So then we're going to go from this location that you just mapped and calculate our side length, which is 11 on the chart. For me, it's 3 7/8. And we're going to go from oops, hold on. So my side length, I'm going to go from N up this straight line that we squared up before, and my side length is 8 3/4 inches. So if I place the 8 3/4 at that intersection, I can go up here to the top, and this will be the top of my armhole. So that was 8 3/8, and that location becomes O, the letter O. So here we want to go out from N 1 1/4 inch. So where you have this little intersection at N, you're going to go out 1 1/4 inch, and you're just going to make a little mark. So we're not drawing a line, we're just making a mark because we want to know where we're going to wind up going. So it's 1 1/4 inch out. So then to get our side seam, which is from O down here to P, this will be called P. So what we're doing with this 1 1/4 is I'm going to put my ruler on the O, and I'm swinging it out that 1 1/4 inch, and I'm going to draw a line there. And this is an area that you would adjust if someone has a larger or smaller bust. But everything we're doing right now is based off of a B cup. So that location becomes the letter P. And this was 1 1/4 inch that we swung out. Now we're going to come back in this direction, what's called the waist arc. So my waist arc is 7 1/8, and I'm adding 1/4 inch to that. So that becomes 7 3/8. So I'm going to measure the 7 3/8. So from P, I'm going here 7 3/8, and I'm just going to make a mark there. get too much. So here, it's right here. And I'm just sort of going to draw a line. That line's going to change. It's going to become curved later on. So then if we go up here where this all comes together, this is the bust. We want to create where the end of our dart is going to be and be drawing dart legs. So basically, your dart point is 5/8 inches from your bust point. So we're going to bring that down where this all came together. So we're going to make our dart. So where K is, we're going to take that and we're going to bring it down to this little hash mark that we made through what said dart placement. And that's the right-hand leg of the dart. So we're going to come down. And that's the right-hand side of your dart. And then the other side,